And now finally, we're going to be focusing on the most recent one, which is 1990. So everyone who knows about the Cold War will know that there was, East Berlin and a West Berlin and an East Germany and a West Germany. And when the two sides united, this was after a period of almost 45 years in which the two sides had been kept separate with very, very different ways of running the economy, very different political institutions. So East Germany was under communism and had a lot of Soviet troops there. And so with communism, there's no private business, like the state runs everything, everything's collectivized. Whereas in West Germany, it was run a lot more along free market lines. And so, you had private businesses, you had like all the major German automobile companies, you had all the other great German companies. And so they really thrived in West Germany. And so when the two sides end up being unified in 1990, it cost a lot to put the things back together, right? And so from 1990 up until 2019, West Germany had to pay a surcharge of 5.5% on their income tax. So, Germans already getting taxed like quite a bit, like kind of on their income tax. On top of that, they had to pay even more as a way of like paying for the cost of unification. And it's estimated that West Germany poured 2 trillion euros into East Germany to try and get them up to standards. And yet even by 2009, East Germany still lagged behind West Germany. It was still about 70% of what the West German economy was at. And even these problems still persist to today. Like the gap has not been closed. And the reason why this gap has not been closed is because from 1950 to 1989, on average, West Germany grew at 4.3% of GDP per year. However, in that same time period, East Germany only grew by 3.1%. So you think, okay, that's not that much, right? But each year adds on. You're talking about a period of almost 40 years, right? With this gap. And so as a result, East Germany grew at 48% slower of a rate than West Germany did. So obviously, you pour all this money in to try and get them to catch up, but realistically, they've still got a long way to go. And on top of that, there's also the societal aspect to this, yeah, right? So people who grew up in West Germany compared to people who grew up in East Germany have very different mindsets, have very different expectations for the role of government and for many societal things. So East Germany tends to be more socially conservative than West Germany, and it also tends to be a lot more dependent on the government, right? And so people's attitudes there tend to be very, very different from that of the West. And we can see this even with the political parties which are dominant in the East and which barely take up any traction in the West. And this is referred to as the Mauer im Kopf, which is German for the wall in the head. So it's the mental wall between West Germans and East Germans. And so even today, 25% of West Germans regret unification, and it's about 11% who regret unification from the East. So there's still a lot of nostalgia for East Germany, and there's still a lot of regret for people in West Germany who think that we paid all this money and was it really worth it? And actually, many of us in the modern era, we kind of have taken like German reunification for granted. We kind of been like, oh, well, it was bound to happen. As soon as the wall came down, as soon as communism kind of was over, yeah, it was bound to reunify. However, this was not a guaranteed thing. So the only countries that supported unification were, well, obviously West Germany and the United States. So President Bush really wanted there to be a unified Germany in order to push the frontier towards Russia even more. They wanted a strong Germany in order to be a counterbalance to, because obviously the Soviet Union, it had withdrawn, but it hadn't completely collapsed at that point. It wasn't until the following year that the Soviet Union ceased to exist. But they wanted to move the borders of NATO like further east, and German unification with the extra strong economy would be a good buffer in that way. However, all the other countries in Europe were not so pleased. So in particular, Margaret Thatcher of Britain and Francois Mitterrand of France, they were very, very hostile to it because, quite understandably, there was the fear of a return of German militarism. You had World War One, you'd had World War Two, and the idea was, well, Germany has kind of been kept under wraps because it's been divided. Now that it's able to reunify, first of all, its population is huge, so it's the biggest in Europe apart from Russia. And second of all, its economy is huge, and so Germany is the dominant economy in Europe. And so without the East, West Germany was a bit more balanced between the economy of Britain and of France. So yeah, they were all on relative the same like parity. However, as soon as you like absorb like East Germany, the economy of Germany like boosts up, and so like all the rest of them kind of get left behind. And so the big fear was that the EU, which as you can kind of see now has kind of come to fruition, the EU is dominated like predominantly by Germany. So obviously France and some of the other powers like kind of are able to kind of challenge that a little bit, but at the end of the day, Germany is the central power, like kind of in the EU. Like what Germany wants is kind of what the EU wants, and so yeah, like so the rest of the states there end up kind of falling within the German orbit, whether they wish to or not. And you know that may be a good thing or it may be a bad thing. Certainly for Germany's national interest, it's very much a good thing. So I'm not implying that it's nefarious in any way, shape or form, but it's something to recognise that people in the rest of Europe were very hostile to it because they understood, like, just in terms of geopolitics, if you have a unified Germany, Germany ends up being the dominant power in the continent. So if the two had never unified, how would things have been different? Well, as we already discussed, West Germany would be, 2 trillion euros richer than it currently is, yeah, because they wouldn't have had to exchange all this money and send it to the East. So West Germany would be 2 trillion euros richer, and East Germany would be 2 trillion euros poorer. So yeah, that gives you a bit of an idea. Also, with regard to population, we already saw during the communist era, we saw a mass kind of exodus of people fleeing from East Germany to West Germany. And so as a result, the population of East Germany went from about 18 million in 1950 to 17 million by 1970. And by 1990, that figure had dropped down again to almost 16 million. And this brain drain, yeah, like this mass exodus of people going from east to west hasn't stopped as a result of the wall coming down. If anything, it still continued. So it's estimated that about 1.7 million East Germans have immigrated to the west. This is after unification even. So even in spite of all this money being pumped in to try and like prop up the East German economy, it still is a situation whereby they're having depopulation. It still is a situation whereby like you have mass unemployment. So the flood of people from East Germany to West Germany would be even greater in this time. And also as well, there's many like societal issues which are very different from West Germany to East Germany. So for instance, we can see within East Germany compared to West Germany, we can see the number of irreligious people being much greater, and it's obviously as a result of the communist regime really enforcing state atheism. We also see the rate of out of wedlock children being much higher in East Germany than in West Germany. So in East Germany, it's at 61%. In West Germany, it's at 27%. And so there's a stark distinction between families who are being raised in West Germany and families being raised in East Germany. But it is something to note that levels of satisfaction within East Germany since unification has greatly shot up. And so in 1991, only 15% of East Germans said that they felt a level of satisfaction with their lives. By 2019, that figure had gone up to 59%. So you can see a great increase in the standard of living and the level of satisfaction that East Germans feel now, as opposed to when it was under the days of the Eastern Bloc. However, in West Germany, the gap is much less. So in West Germany, we can see it's gone up only from 52% in 1991 up to 64% in 2019. So, so both East and West Germany are kind of similar levels of satisfaction, but we can still see that West Germany has a higher level of satisfaction, but also that level of satisfaction has grown less than it has in East Germany. So East Germany benefited a lot from unification. West Germany, not so much.